think because we are on a time budget, it is now time perhaps to open it up to the floor. We've got anyone who has any questions for our panel. So you in the spectacles.
Thanks. The name is Stella. I am a student governance, but as well, I deal with stakeholder relationship or program provider. But my question is perhaps to the panel, more specifically to the two very strong women in politics. But I want to know, what is the role of men in defeating patriarchy? As beneficiaries of patriarchy, what does the panel feel that, and I think it was Anita Bosch who spoke about it, but what ought to be the role of men who consider themselves progressive men in defeating patriarchy, particularly because we're beneficiaries of that system. Whether I like it or not, as I enter into this room as a male, I'll always be more privileged. And so what ought to be my role? And perhaps that's my question. Thanks.
Yeah, could you perhaps be more specific in who you'd like to answer that?
Professor, it's particularly to them as politicians.
Okay.
There's a trend here that the MEC must summarize everything. It's a position of privilege. Yeah. I suppose, that's what I think my comrade here was talking about, that we have to revisit our socialization strategies so that we don't swing to another extreme in terms of putting a burden on men. But if we take a long-term view in terms of ensuring that in our small spaces like private households, we begin to socialize people in an equal manner, gradually that will bring about a different way of viewing relationships, gender relationships. Generally, it's a in democracy, the question is more complex than you think, because in the past, there was a kind of legislation which was sexist, which will give certain privileges to men in terms of salaries and so on, discriminating against women. But in democracy, you deal with subtle discriminatory tendencies. And sometimes I think even men, they are not conscious of some of their actions, that they are undermining the women. So that's why it becomes tricky. And sometimes they will be genuinely thinking that they are protecting women. I went to a forum recently, and this person was genuinely saying, oh yeah, now women can come in, we've sorted out this and this. And he seemed to be genuine. And I was looking at him, and I was surprised and shocked. But then I realized that, you see, in democracy, again, wherever we are, we have to find ways of talking about these difficult things, because they are subtle. You have to be conscious, you have to be sophisticated to be conscious of what you are doing. When I'm talking about sophistication, I'm not talking about education. Even in rural communities, traditional leadership, there are men who respect women, who will believe that it's my wife, will make decisions about land, about cattle, about this, or we have to agree. But sometimes you find that people will do it unconsciously and not expect a woman to work and say, but I will give you my cards and a checkbook. And so it's a good thing for a woman to go shopping in Paris. But in terms of that woman's development, maybe it's a challenge, because the woman is really kept in a position of being perpetually dependent. If anything happens to that man, the woman will struggle to redefine the world and so on. So we have to talk about subtle forms of discrimination and practices that undermine our gender equality struggles.
Would you like to add something?
Can I just bring it back to the workplace and suggest that it's not a bad thing to be a male feminist? I know it's a bad word that people don't like to use, but to make it very practical in the workplace, thank you. To make it very practical in the workplace, for example, if I am fighting for my voice and to be heard at a meeting, if you as a man can say, but Dimpo is trying to speak, you add to my voice and suddenly I'm being listened to, and that's how you're adding to this fight, because you're making the other men in the room listen to me. And because you're a man, unfortunately, they will listen and suddenly pay attention to me. So if it means opening the way for me as a woman, then I think you should do it. And do it proudly as well. Call yourself a feminist if need be. A lot that happens to us women a lot is that when you go through security gates and then the male security guard wants to check your bag and I refuse because I know my rights, a female security guard should check my bag. You as a man don't walk past because you can just walk past. Tell him that a woman must check my bag, you know. Be a feminist and fight with me for my cause. And I think that's how you can do your bit.
Okay, women first. Okay, my name is Batlile from the Citizen. My question is directed to the MEC. You spoke about stereotypes and about women being bought dolls and men aeroplanes. What I want to know, because we're covering a lot of stories and we go to places where you'd find that I'm a journalist and I work with a photographer, and I want to ask a question, and when I'm talking to the person that is a man, when I'm talking to the person, they don't even respond to me. They don't even look at me. They look at the man that's there, and I'm the journalist. So when I'm trying to say, but, and they look at the other person. So I want to know this stereotype to be broken. Do we have organizations that go to foundation phase schools where they can learn from there? Because to teach a kid something when they're still young is very important. So I want to know if we have people who encourage basic education, to have organizations that go to school and teach kids to learn about trying to balance equality. I just want to, thank you.
Thank you. Indeed, it happens. It happens. Subtle, patriarchy and lack of acknowledgement that you are the person, the journalist. He's supposed to look at your eyes, and he chooses to look at the other person. So I think that everything really starts at home. They say charity begins at home. It's okay for dad at home, to change the nappy of the baby. It's okay for dad at home to wash those dishes. It's okay for dad at home to do that washing. Those little things. They say children learn from seeing parents doing something. They copy. So in that way, children will learn, from adults, from parents, that girls are actually equal to boys as well. Starts in the family, but in society as well. How men behave in society. Like I said before, they are not homogeneous, they're heterogeneous, they're different, they behave differently. But it's important for them in society to behave in a manner that will teach others respect and equality for all. At the workplace as well, everywhere. Men have to be involved. They have to be involved to show that they're also committed. Remember, O.R. Tambo said that the struggle for women emancipation is not a struggle for women only. It's also a struggle. It's not a struggle that should be fought by women only, but it's a struggle that should be fought by men as well. So men need to be involved. They need to be engaged. In fact, we do have men. We have men for change. We have, various organizations. And I think you bring in a very important element of studying it at school as well. If you miss it from the family, the basic unit, you'll get it at school. So it means that we have to relook at the curriculum and try and ensure that we do instill that sense in our little ones at school. And I'm sure the other panelists can add on to that.
But I'm just thinking about the educators out there and perhaps looking at the university's curriculum with regards to the training of teachers. Because what I found certainly with my daughter in her school is when she was in nursery school, they asked them to bring to school things to braai, things to clean, and so on, and they were going to teach the kids how to braai their own sausages. And I remember the message that came back home when I picked her up and said, "How was your day? What did you do?" And she said it was wonderful. The boys braaied and the girls cleaned. And then I said, "But why is that? Why do you think that happened?" She says, "No, the teacher said afterwards, this is what the boys must do, and then afterwards we've got to do the following." And I took it up with the school. So I was labeled as the mom feminist, or the F word very often. But I took it up because I said, this is not right. But the belief of that educator was that girls are ordained to do particular things in life and boys are ordained to do. And I think religion has a big role to play in this as well. So as you can hear this evening, this is a multifaceted issue. It has a lot of angles. It's not just we do one thing and then somebody will look into your eyes and recognize you're the journalist. But it starts with yourself, with your own awareness, and then the awareness that you create with other people. So in that situation, when that happens, you've got to assert yourself, put out your hand and say, "Hello, I'm the journalist. Would you like to answer my question, please?" And that also proves to people that firstly, you know who you are, but that they were actually not correct in what had happened in that particular situation.
I have a question. Hi, Ms. Mpo. I have two clarity-seeking questions, one directed to MEC Khoza. MEC, we know that Gauteng is home to one of the fastest-growing economies in South Africa, and women form part of the bigger piece of the workforce. What is it that, as the Gauteng government, are doing to ensure that there are checks and balances, both for the private and public sector, to ensure gender equity that you earlier mentioned the importance of? Secondly, to Professor Mkhize, recently the Sowetan published an article that had a headline that reads, "Gays can now join the ANC Women's League." What I want to know is, what was the real resolution at the recent elective conference with regards to the issue? I'm saying this because as the LGBTI formations, we do not condone this, as the issue of terminology has a problem generally when you look at the role of media in trying to shape society. Just to provide context, what was the real resolution with regards to this issue? Thank you.
I would like you to start so that I can be guided. Yes, I think you are correct to say that Gauteng is the home for fastest growing economy. Yes, we're not where we should be as Gauteng, and because indeed many people come to Gauteng looking for greener pastures. I think we should be doing more than what we are doing here. But the good is that indeed Gauteng contributes about 34% of the GDP to this country. I think it's 36%, and then 10% to the continent. And I think you asked then a question: what are we doing, to ensure checks and balances, and to ensure that the public sector and the private sector promote equality? We have quite a number of policies, as you may have heard. Currently, our Vision 2030 is about transforming the economy, breaking the structure of the economy, because as we speak now, I think earlier on, the Deputy Minister spoke about the fact that the economy indeed is owned by the few. So even here in Gauteng, it's like that. It's in the hands of the few, and we all know who the few are. So with the transformation agenda, we're trying to break that structure of the economy to ensure that going forward, men and women benefit equally. But we also need to see, women also participating, taking advantage of the opportunities that are there, that have been, put forward for them to benefit. And it's about modernization. It's also about reindustrialization. We also are promoting the, manufacturing. We want to see more men and women going back to manufacturing so that we are not seen as a society that consumes. We are a society that consumes, but we need a society that really manufactures, that is in the industry. Hence, you've heard the minister of, I think it's Minister Patel, talking about creation of, starting with 100 industrialists. And I want to believe that we will have women industrialists. In fact, the meeting that we had, we did see a lot of women who are already in the industries of locomotives. These are women who are manufacturing parts of motor cars. I was so, nicely surprised. There are women who are into ICT. So women are there, they're entering the space, and we need a critical mass of those women to enter there. Our policy says whatever we do in terms of preferential procurement, nothing less than 30% should go to women. We must benefit women, we must benefit young people, we must also benefit the people with disabilities. We are recently talking about the township economy revitalization. We're saying that, the money is actually in the townships, but that money comes out of the townships and it goes out. It goes to other already well-established communities. People move out, for example, from Soweto, they go and buy in Senti, they go and buy in other suburbs. So we would like that economy to remain in the townships, and hence we have started even buying goods and services from the township entrepreneurs. So it's a lot that we are doing, and I'm sure it needs another discussion. Thanks.
Mine is about the headlines. Well, just if I may just share briefly, as part of policy formulations, there was a special commission which looked at social transformation. And the most important aspect of that was to look at traditional cultural practices, new social formations, and the contradictions that exist between some cultural practices and the Bill of Rights in our Constitution. So that question, the headline sounded like saying, oh, tomorrow there'll be a woman president. And there were quite a number of issues which were looked at. Practices like ukutwala, whereby a girl is forced and taken to a boy's homestead. There were practices like virginity testing. And so the normal process then will be that the policy unit will integrate all the views and issue out policy positions. So at this point in time, I haven't seen the final policy position, but the discussions were broad around contradictions that sometimes exist in our cultural practices and way of thinking as against our Constitution as a Bill of Rights.
So unfortunately, we have to cut it short there. I think, Renika, how can people perhaps, I don't know, if they've got plenty of questions, okay, we can have two more. So, lady in the red over there, and then gentleman over here. Can we start, is yours in relation to what the MEC and Prof just said, or?
Okay, hello, good evening.
Okay,
Can I
so-
please, oh, sorry, can I just be given an opportunity to speak, please?
I think out of respect for the panel and who
Okay.
we've chosen, let's allow the lady in the red to speak. Thank you.
Hello, as you can all see, I'm like before computers, etc., which shows my age.
Born before computer.
I should like to say that I would like to honor the generation before us, because if it had not been for the generation before us, which would be your grandparents, my parents, I, for example, would not have been in the position I am now. I had the most wonderful upbringing in a very poor house, but in a hard-working house. My dad was a real gentleman towards ladies. I feel so honored to have had him. I feel honored to have had my mother, who installed so much of the idea of feminism in us, although she never could go to university because she was born at a time where there were no scholarships, and although she had been accepted at Tuckies for a certain course, she could not go because there was a terrible drought at that stage in Namibia, and being a Namibian citizen, she could not go. So I would just like to say, on behalf of the older generation, we honor you, we thank you, because if it had not been for you, we would not have achieved, and we would not have been able to pave the way for you guys.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson, for giving me this opportunity. I'd like to start by saying that Malibongwe igama lamakhosikazi.
Malibongwe.
My name is Thabo Mngadi, and I'm from the Department of Education. And yeah, I feel intimidated because of the power that it is in this room is enormous. And thank you so much for being here, guys. So now, the question to you, the panel, is that there is a trend in society whereby only urban women who are politically and economically emancipated, right, who are leaders in corporate institutions, are being respected only. And we forget about the women that are in the deep rural areas in Kailicha, that are still being ostracized, that are still living under the patriarchal context whereby they can't do anything about their situations, that they don't even get such opportunities to speak about such issues. So my question is that what are you doing as women in leadership to make sure that you drag them out of where they are and make sure that you challenge these patriarchal systems and make sure that the laws that are being given, or the laws that these women have in the Constitution, materialize and they know about them, right? And the second level of this question is, I don't want to sound repetitive, but I feel as if the issue of woman-on-woman discrimination is very important, because in our society you find that women are still gossiping about other women. Women take it to an extent whereby they bewitch other women. What do we then do as society in such an instance, because of people don't want to see other women flourishing in life? So can you please care to justify to the House at large based on those two questions? Thank you.
But I want to talk to Thabo's one.
Okay.
I think really we have spent a lot of time trying to talk about the importance of being connected and of mobilizing and of going back to the basics. It's because of exactly what Thabo is saying, that irrespective of where you are in terms of opportunities, you will not sustain it if you are not connected to women in other sectors. I mean, just to mention women in agriculture and rural development, those women, they intimidate you if you are in a room with them. They own farms, they are producing, but they are in deep rural areas. We have been told stories that if the Department of Agriculture takes them to a hotel, some of them have never spent a night in a hotel. But they've made it. They are making a lot of progress. So really, all our efforts is to remain committed and to go back to the basics and not to allow these emerging opportunities to divide us. And a lot have been said about mobilizing, being connected, and it's us.
This has been researched as well. And I think a lot's made of very often women on women. I hear a lot about pull her down, that type of, the research says that there's the queen bee syndrome. So yes, these things exist, but again, I would like to ask you to reflect on potentially how men do this as well. And it seems more evident because a woman is not supposed to do that, is it? Yeah, but a man's also not supposed to do it. And it happens in other subtle ways, the way in which men kind of take each other out by the knees very swiftly, very fast, by a look, just the way that they are. So, though I'm saying that, it is not right. So it's not a good behavior, it's not conducive to transformation. And I think certainly in terms of where I'm at, is really just becoming much more sensitive to these things, and you can only do it by what you're referring to as being connected. If you start talking to people, if you start understanding struggles, if you really start understanding power dynamics, oppression, all of those things which are good reads. This library is full of excellent books. And if you read beyond what you're studying, you start understanding the dynamics of human living. So I invite you to actually take out some books and start reading.
Thank you. Sorry. Please. I'll try to be very short. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak this evening. My question really is, okay, I actually want to explain it a little bit, is that I understand that this is a new struggle for us as women in our country. We know our women back then in the early 1950s, they really fought for the liberation of this country. And they had obviously certain goals and certain aims. There were certain things that they wanted to achieve. And some of us are really working really hard in terms of, in community engagements. And we're basically not asking anything from the government to say, we want you to fund us or anything like that. But we're saying that with the certain initiatives that we trying to come up with. How is government going to help us in terms of saying, we'll mentor you, we'll help you get somewhere with whatever initiatives that we are starting, initiatives that we are really going out in our communities and raising awareness to say, stop child pregnancies and such things like that. So I wanted to find out from our MECs or our MEC that what is it that they can do? We know our progress now, we know what is happening, and we know as women in leadership, we know the roles that we need, okay, thank you. Yes, we know our role as women, but now we are trying to come up with certain programs that can help women, young women. So what is it that government can do, to help us as we are starting up these programs and initiatives? Because we know that ministers cannot now go to the communities and be helping. We can actually do something where we are. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I think we should congratulate you. I can't see you. Right at the back. We should congratulate you and other young women. You're beautiful as well. Very intelligent. And grounded in your community. I really am proud of you. So continue to do the good work that you are doing, because indeed, we are saying that people should start the legal things wherever they are, and then government can come in and support. We have, what is happening in Gauteng, for example, is that we have taken all the sectors very seriously. The women's sector, we've taken it also very, very seriously. So there will be an MEC that's responsible for the women's sector. I can share her number with you, so that you can also reach out, and she'll be glad to hear that you are doing something in your community. We do have mentoring programs as well in various fields. It's mentoring in infrastructure development. I don't do it personally, but we do have those who are experts in the departments in government to mentor young people, young women, depending on the fields that they are in. So government is prepared to help young people, especially when you've already started, because others bahlale ekoneni angithi, and ukuthi awuzayithola kanjani.
I think that perhaps draws to an end the conversation, of course, with women in leadership. I just want to thank you, our esteemed panelists, for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and speak to us, empower and enrich us. Let's give them a warm round of applause. I think from my side, I'd just like to end off with this rather graphic but befitting analogy. I think if we think of the labor process, as a woman gives birth, the cervix expands. We know there's a lot of pain. Well, I heard there's a lot of pain. We also know that the cervix is part of nature, though, so it has an extraordinary intelligence. And the moment you perhaps stop fighting that process, labor becomes a little bit more easier and shorter. Am I correct? So with that said, I think on numerous occasions, women, we've given birth to billions of people. That's why we're all here today. And if we can give birth to new life, we can definitely give birth to a new style of leadership and empowerment that can perhaps carry the world forward and enrich everyone in society at large. So with that said, thank you to the University of Johannesburg's library, to the Citizen, as well as the Nelson Mandela Foundation for creating such a platform. I hope that we are all not just talking about this, but we're inspired to action. Thank you.
The University of Johannesburg. Rethink, reinvent.